Adasha. Living in a gilded cage, this is my reality. For some of us, life becomes an inescapable trap, bound by invisible chains that are too tight, too complex to break. No matter how hard we try to free ourselves, we remain ensnared. At 18, I was chosen to be Luna of Woodshire. What should have been an honor quickly turned into a waking nightmare. Back then, Randy, my husband and Alpha, had seemed perfect. He was charming, attentive, and loving during our courtship. Everyone envied me, even to the point of jealousy. I lost friends over it, but I didn't care. We weren't fated mates, but I told myself love could grow. For the first year, it did seem like a dream. Then the dream soured. Randy revealed a darker side, jealous, controlling, violent. Every attempt I made to leave only worsened the situation. He wielded his power like a weapon, threatening to eliminate my parents if I tried to escape. It wasn't an empty threat. Randy controlled the entire Western Territory and had the means to make good on it. To ensure my compliance, he cut me off completely from my family, banning all contact. I was isolated, just as he'd planned, no friends, no family, only him. He stripped me of my Luna responsibilities, delegating them to the beta's wife, leaving me with no resources and no purpose outside the walls of our home. After my first attempt to run, he locked me away in our apartment within the pack house for 8 long months. I was only freed when his beta intervened, forcing him to grant me a sliver of liberty. But it wasn't real freedom. It was a leash, designed to keep me tethered. Randy's suspicions were unrelenting. He accused me of infidelity, deceit, and betrayal over the smallest interactions. Smiling at a man, exchanging pleasantries at an event, it all ended with punishment at home. I was suffocating under the weight of his paranoia and cruelty. The pack's pity was meaningless. No one dared challenge the most powerful alpha. 6 years into this harrowing marriage, I was hosting a gala. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but for me, it was just another minefield to navigate. Every glance, every word had to be carefully measured to avoid provoking Randy's wrath. His possessive gaze followed me everywhere, a constant reminder of the danger I lived in. The gala was exhausting, but it presented an opportunity I couldn't ignore. Since Randy had banished my parents, I had lived in constant agony, wondering about their well-being. I knew they were with Alpha Jason's pack now, but all attempts to contact them had failed. Randy used their safety as leverage, a leash he tightened whenever I showed signs of defiance. If he wasn't happy, I'd lose all hope of ever seeing them again. Randy's threats were not idle. His dominance over the West was absolute, and eliminating his enemies, or perceived enemies, was second nature to him. Other alphas admired his iron rule, a chilling reality I struggled to accept. Desperation to escape consumed me, but I couldn't act without knowing my parents were safe. My only hope lay with Alpha Jason. Though we'd met briefly as teenagers during camp, we were little more than acquaintances. Still, I clung to the hope that our shared family bond might compel him to help. Lost in thought, I debated how to approach Jason without arousing Randy's suspicions. Before I could decide, Jason appeared and extended a hand, asking me to dance. My instincts screamed to decline, but I knew this might be my only chance to speak to him. I glanced at Randy, gauging his reaction. He gave a brief, disinterested nod before looking away, a rare display of indifference. With a mix of apprehension and determination, I accepted Jason's hand. The gala unfolded in the sprawling gardens, every corner bathed in soft, golden light. With so many eyes around us, I felt a rare sense of safety as Jason and I danced. His presence was steady, his demeanor calm, and when he suggested a stroll to admire the garden's lush expanse, I agreed without hesitation. It was an opportunity I couldn't afford to miss. Under the guise of polite conversation, I seized the moment to plead for his help. My words spilled out, desperate yet cautious, and Jason listened intently, his expression grave. He promised to assist, assuring me that I would soon reconnect with my parents. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a glimmer of hope broke through the suffocating darkness that had become my life. What I failed to notice, however, was the storm brewing within Randy. His eyes had followed my every move, his anger carefully concealed beneath a mask of calm. It wasn't until we returned to the pack house that his true emotions began to surface. The click of the bedroom door locking behind us sent a shiver of dread down my spine. The silence was deafening, and I knew immediately I had overstepped. The consequences would be severe. Adasha. The slap came without warning, a crack of force that sent my head snapping to the side. Pain blossomed across my cheek, sharp and stinging, leaving me disoriented. My breath hitched, caught somewhere between shock and fear. I stumbled backward, my body colliding with the cold, unyielding wall behind me. There was nowhere to go, not that escape was even an option. "Randy, please," I whispered, my voice trembling, barely audible over the pounding of my heart. My hands lifted instinctively, palms out, a futile gesture of defense. His fury was palpable, radiating from him in waves that seemed to thicken the very air. His chest heaved, his jaw clenched, and his eyes, those darkened, unrelenting eyes, locked onto mine with a promise I didn't dare challenge. "Are you not happy here, Adasha?" he asked, his voice chillingly calm. Each word was measured, deliberate, slicing through the tension like a blade. But I knew better than to trust his composure. It wasn't real. It was the mask he wore when the storm inside him threatened to spill over, and the fire in his eyes betrayed the truth. I shook my head, desperate to explain, to diffuse his fury, but the words caught in my throat. He didn't wait for me to respond. "All you had to do tonight," he continued, his tone tightening, "was be a gracious hostess. That's it. That's all I asked of you." His voice hardened, the venom seeping through. "But no. You couldn't even manage that, could you?" Each word was like a fresh blow, a second slap that landed deeper than the first. My heart twisted, shame mingling with the suffocating fear. He wasn't finished. Blushing at Jason's compliments, he spat, stepping closer. "Dancing with him like you have no sense of decency. As if you weren't a married woman. As if you weren't my Luna." The emphasis on my was a dagger, sharp and possessive. He loomed over me, his presence oppressive, his rage consuming. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to flee, but I knew better. There was no running, no escaping the cage Randy had so carefully crafted around me. I swallowed hard, my trembling hands dropping to my sides. "I was only being polite," I said softly, my voice cracking under the weight of my fear. "It meant nothing, Randy. Nothing." He laughed, a short, bitter sound that sent a chill through me. "Nothing," he echoed, his tone mocking. "You think I'm blind? A fool. Do you think I didn't see the way he looked at you, the way you let him?" I shook my head frantically, but the words to defend myself wouldn't come. They wouldn't matter anyway. "You belong to me," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You would do well to remember that." The weight of his claim crushed me, the finality of his words wrapping around me like a vice. I opened my mouth to speak, but his words lashed out before I could form a single syllable. Each one struck like a whip. "Do you have any idea what you looked like? What they thought of me, Adasha?" His voice carried an edge that made me shrink back. "People stared. They whispered. They judged me." His anger climbed, voice cracking with rage. "Even Alpha Philip asked me if something was wrong between us." "I was just being polite," I said, my voice trembling under the weight of his fury. It was small, desperate, as though shrinking would make me invisible. I was trying to be a good hostess. "Polite?" he roared, stepping closer. I flinched as the heat of his anger made the air suffocating. "A good hostess doesn't forget who she belongs to. A good hostess doesn't humiliate her mate in front of everyone. Tell me, Adasha, were you being polite when you danced with him? When you strolled with him for everyone to see?" My throat tightened, and no words came. What could I say? The truth, how I had been trapped at the gala, balancing between pleasing the guests and fulfilling my duties, would mean nothing to him. His eyes burned with fury, unyielding, deaf to explanations. "Don't I treat you well enough?" he demanded, his tone dropping to a venomous growl. It was quieter, but no less dangerous. "Don't I praise you, compliment you?" He closed the gap between us, his presence looming, and I instinctively pressed myself against the wall. I nodded quickly, desperately, as though agreement could extinguish the fire in his eyes. "Then why didn't you delegate someone else to handle him?" His bitterness oozed through clenched teeth. "Why did it have to be you?" I opened my mouth again, but no words came. What could I say? That I hadn't had a choice. That turning the guest away would have been seen as an insult, a failure of diplomacy. That Randy's rage would have found me either way? My silence hung heavy, and I knew, whatever I said, whatever I did, it wouldn't matter. In his eyes, I was already guilty. My heart pounded violently, echoing dread with every beat. Then his hand twisted into my hair. The pain was immediate, searing, and I cried out as he yanked hard. Tears streamed freely down my face, sobs choking in my throat as I struggled to comprehend how the man who claimed to love me could do this. How could he look into my tear-streaked face and still hurt me? How could he live with himself, knowing he was destroying me, piece by agonizing piece? When I chose to mate with you, it was because I thought you were different, he spat, venom dripping from every word. Different from the other sluts in the packs. Different from my mother. At the mention of his mother, a pit of nausea settled in my stomach. I shook my head, trembling, silently begging him to stop. But he was too far gone. His anger was a festering wound, infected with hatred that time had only deepened. His loathing for her had become a shadow over everything, a poison in every corner of his being. But I was wrong, he continued, his words slicing through my defenses. You're no different. You're just like her. No, Randy, please, I whispered, my voice breaking, barely audible over my sobs. The tears came harder, but my pleading only seemed to inflame him further. His grip tightened, the pain sharp enough to make me gasp. You've been a bad girl, Adasha, he growled, his tone low and menacing, sending shivers of dread down my spine. And you know what I do to bad girls. I shattered. My body convulsed with sobs, and the last fragments of my resolve crumbled into nothingness. Please, I whimpered, though I knew my words were useless. They always were. That night, Randy unleashed his fury with a cruelty that broke me. The entire pack house must have heard my cries. They couldn't not have. But no one came to help. They never did. Maybe they believed I deserved it. Maybe they thought it was my fault, that I had invited his wrath upon myself. Adasha. When Randy was finally done, I lay there, too broken to move. My body ached, my soul reduced to tatters. In his usual twisted way, Randy shifted from monster to caregiver, lifting me as though I were fragile, precious even. He cradled me against his chest, the contradiction in his touch as jarring as the bruises forming beneath my skin. Silent and shattered, I let him carry me to the bathroom. Set me down gently, his hands careful now, as if to erase the brutality that had preceded this moment. The hot bath filled the room with steam, but I couldn't feel its warmth. The water lapped at my skin, but all I felt was cold, an icy numbness that settled in my chest, spreading until it reached every corner of me. Cold and disgusted. Not just with him, but with myself. You need to stop provoking me like this, Adasha, he murmured, his tone soft, almost tender, as though he were comforting a wounded child. His hands moved the sponge over my battered skin with a gentleness that made me want to scream. Look what you made me do. His words sank like stones into the pit of my stomach. I bit my tongue, swallowing the scream, my hatred held captive behind clenched teeth. I knew better than to let it show. Randy's fuse was short, and silence was my only defense. I sat there, stiff and unyielding, the tension in my body refusing to give way, even as he spoke to me in that nauseatingly sweet tone. It's been 6 years, Adasha, he said, his voice wavering as though he were the one bearing the pain. 6 years, and you still drive me insane. He paused, his face crumpling as tears streamed down his cheeks. I glanced at him briefly, the sight of his tears as familiar as the ache in my ribs. They meant nothing to me. They never had. We'd been here before, trapped in the same suffocating cycle, his rage, his remorse, his empty promises. Don't make me kill you, he whispered, his voice trembling, raw with a fear that felt almost genuine. Please, don't make me do it. The words sent a chill down my spine, but I stayed silent. What could I say? I'd heard it all before, his tearful pleas, his broken apologies, his declarations of love. Each one had been a lie, each promise a thread tightening the noose around me. I hate hurting you, darling, he continued, his voice cracking as he leaned closer. He reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair away from my face. The gesture might have seemed tender to anyone else, but to me, it was another weapon. Can't you see? It's killing me. I stared at him, mute, my chest heavy with the silence that held all the words I was too afraid to speak. He might have been crying, but I felt nothing for him. No pity, no sympathy, no flicker of hope. Just a cold, hollow hatred for the monster who had stolen my life and dared to call it love. Are you planning on leaving me? Randy's voice trembled, though the sharp edge beneath it sent a chill down my spine. I shook my head immediately, my heart hammering against my ribs. Denying him the answer he wanted wasn't an option, not when he was like this. His hand reached out, stroking my hair with a grotesque mockery of tenderness that made my skin crawl. Don't be like my mother, Adasha, he murmured, his voice cracking as if the words carried unbearable weight. She ruined my life. She ruined my father's life. I don't want to live like that. You're making me do things I know I'll regret, darling. Don't push me. The desperation in his tone froze me, but not in the way he might have intended. His tears, so familiar, filled me with dread, a dread that deepened with each sob. It was always the same, the breakdown that followed the breaking. I'm a monster, Adasha, he whispered, raw and broken, pulling me into an embrace that felt more like a trap than comfort. His arms were tight, suffocating, and I stayed rigid, unsure of what he wanted from me. Comfort. Forgiveness. Surrender. My body ached from his punishment, every bruise a reminder of his rage. But the pain inside me, the emptiness where I used to feel whole, was far worse. I didn't think that would ever heal. He wept into my shoulder, begging me not to destroy him. His words washed over me, hollow and self-serving, leaving me wondering, who was supposed to fix me? Who would hold me as I crumbled into pieces? His tears weren't for me. They never were. They fell for the man he believed he was losing, for his pride, his obsession. Never for the woman he'd broken over and over again. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. Sleep felt like an impossible luxury. Willow, my wolf, paced restlessly within me, her presence filling me with unease. She shared my truth, the one neither of us wanted to face. If we stayed, it would kill us. Randy's love wasn't love. It was suffocating, possessive, an obsession that burned too hot and wild to control. One day, his jealousy, his temper, his inability to trust would consume him entirely. And when that day came, there would be no coming back. Adasha. Morning crept in slowly, the pale light casting long shadows across the room. Randy's presence loomed heavy, as suffocating as ever. The buzz of his phone broke the silence, and he answered it sharply, his tone clipped and controlled. Jason, he said, and my stomach dropped. Why was Jason calling him? Anxiety surged through me, my pulse roaring in my ears as I strained to catch the other side of the conversation. Randy's voice grew colder with each word. I see, he said, the sharp edge of anger unmistakable. His gaze turned to me, piercing and heavy, pinning me in place. I felt exposed, every secret laid bare under his suspicion. Okay. Thank you, he said curtly, ending the call. He set the phone aside and turned his full attention to me. His expression was dark, menacing, and my breath hitched as the silence stretched. Did you think Jason would go against me, Adasha? He asked, his voice low and deadly. I froze, panic surging. What had Jason told him? Throwing yourself at him to get what you want, Randy sneered, his laughter bitter and mocking. You must think very little of him to offer yourself for the sake of your parents. What are you planning, Adasha? Don't you know I own the West? Everyone in it answers to me. No, I said quickly, shaking my head, my voice trembling. I didn't throw myself at him, Randy. You saw it, he came to me. I only danced with him because I thought you were okay with it. And all I did was ask about my parents' well-being. That's all. It was a lie, but a necessary one. My voice wavered as I tried to steady myself, terrified he'd see through me. The truth, that I'd sought Jason's help, was a dangerous confession. And Jason had twisted the narrative to save himself, leaving me to face the consequences. Randy studied me for a long, suffocating moment, his presence as oppressive as the silence stretching between us. Please, Randy, I whispered, my voice trembling under the weight of my desperation. I can't take any more. For a fleeting second, his eyes softened, a flicker of something unrecognizable, regret, perhaps? But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced by the seething anger that had become all too familiar. "You're lucky I have a meeting this morning," he muttered, backing away. Relief washed over me, immediate but hollow. I knew this reprieve was only temporary. Last night's fury wasn't gone, it was lying in wait, biding its time, ready to consume me again when he returned. He dressed swiftly, his movements sharp and deliberate, tension radiating off him like smoke from a fire. His voice was calm when he mentioned the emergency meeting, but the darkness in his eyes unsettled me. As he moved toward his safe, I watched him retrieve a stack of documents with his usual air of dominance, slamming the heavy door shut with a resounding finality. That safe had always intrigued me, and today, my curiosity burned hotter than ever. I had memorized the combination long ago, a silent act of rebellion, a small victory gifted by my photographic memory. With Randy gone, I knew this was my chance. Whatever secrets he had locked away might hold the answers I needed, about my parents, about his plans, about anything that could help me escape. As he gathered his belongings and left, I schooled my expression into careful neutrality, masking the chaos within. The torment he inflicted on me wasn't my fault, yet guilt and fear clung to me like a second skin. But today, I would uncover the truth. The moment the door clicked shut, I sprang into action. My heart thundered in my chest as I approached the safe, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. Each turn of the dial, each satisfying click of the tumblers, felt like a small act of defiance against the control Randy wielded over my life. The door opened with a soft metallic groan, revealing neat stacks of documents and money. I sifted through them quickly, desperation mounting until I spotted a folder with my name on it. My breath hitched as I pulled it free. Why would Randy have a folder about me? What could possibly be inside? I braced myself for something horrific, but nothing could have prepared me for the truth. Inside was a bill of sale, my name scrawled across it like a grim banner. My parents weren't my biological parents, and they had sold me to Randy as if I were a possession, a piece of furniture to be bartered. The receipt was there, cold and clinical, a damning record of the transaction that had stolen my life. My heart shattered into jagged pieces as the truth sank in. I had been living a lie. The people who raised me, who I thought loved me, had sold me into this nightmare. Adoption itself wasn't the wound, it was the betrayal. I had been commodified, handed over to a man who treated me like property. For 6 long years, I had endured Randy's cruelty, clinging to his threats about my parents, holding on to the hope that they cared for me. But they didn't. They had sold me, and the profits of their betrayal likely financed their comfortable lives, far removed from the hell I endured every day. My knees buckled, and I collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of grief and rage. Tears poured down my face, and a guttural sob tore from my throat. It was too much to bear. "This isn't the time, Adasha," Willow growled, her voice sharp and grounding. "This has made our load lighter. It's time to leave, and to hell with those traitors." Her anger mirrored my own, igniting a fire deep within me. She was right. There was nothing left for me here. I had nothing to lose now, and no reason to stay. I scrambled to my feet, wiping the tears from my face and steeling my resolve. The look in Randy's eyes before he left had been a warning, a promise that his rage would not be contained for long. I had no time to waste. I'd attempted escape before, but this time was different. The chains that bound me had shattered. The lies, the manipulation, the threats, none of it mattered anymore. I had no one to protect, no reason to linger. This was my moment. If I stayed, Randy's control would eventually turn fatal. I couldn't afford to gamble with my life any longer. The time to leave was now. And I wouldn't look back. Adasha. There was no time to second guess, no space for hesitation. I had been planning this moment for years, 3 long, agonizing years of plotting, preparing, and waiting for the right time to escape. Each failed attempt had come at a terrible cost. To Randy, my efforts to leave weren't just acts of defiance, they were personal insults, each failure punished with a fury that left me shattered in every possible way. His rage broke my body and crushed my spirit, leaving scars that ran far deeper than the surface. Every attempt chipped away at who I once was, leaving only fragments of myself behind. But not this time. This time, I wasn't planning to fail. Some might suggest I seek help from Randy's family, but they were no saviors. They were as cruel as he was, circling me like vultures, eager for my downfall. Their judgment and disdain were relentless, treating me as though I should be grateful for a life that was never truly mine to begin with. Now I understood why. I wasn't just their Luna, I was bought property. Randy, on his best days, could play the perfect Prince Charming. For a fleeting moment, his charm could almost make me forget the nightmare he became on his worst. But those worst days came too often, and when they did, even the devil seemed kinder by comparison. His remorse was hollow, his promises empty, his declarations of love as toxic as the man himself. I had come to see Randy for what he truly was, volatile, cruel, and utterly dangerous. And now, his ultimate weapon against me, my parents, was nullified. The truth had set me free in a way I hadn't expected. Learning that the people I had clung to, the ones I'd endured so much pain to protect, had sold me like a piece of furniture erased the guilt that had weighed me down for so long. I owed them nothing. I owed him nothing. This time, I wasn't shackled by fear or duty. I was leaving, and if Randy wanted to turn his wrath on them, so be it. They had forfeited my loyalty when they sold me into this living hell. Staying wasn't an option anymore. Staying meant death, that was the only certainty. No mark on my neck, no title as Luna of the strongest pack, could justify the price of my life. I had to leave, and I had to do it now. I packed my essentials into a small bag, careful not to betray my intentions. The pack was full of watchers, loyal to Randy, ever vigilant, and quick to alert him at the slightest hint of rebellion. My escape had to be flawless, invisible. I couldn't afford a single misstep. I packed only what I needed to get across the country, far from his reach, his power, and the suffocating weight of his presence. From the safe, I had taken a modest stash of cash. It was nothing compared to the vast ocean of Randy's wealth, but it was enough for me to disappear. A new identity, a fresh start, maybe even a quiet life running a small pastry shop in some forgotten town. As for the mark on my neck, I already had a story ready. I'd tell anyone who asked that my mate was dead. A lie, yes, but one I clung to with fervent hope. Perhaps one day, it would become the truth, though Randy's cursed resilience made even that hope feel tenuous. I moved quickly, my hands steady and my resolve unshaken. There was no room for hesitation now. The plan was simple: make it out of the pack house, slip into the woods, and run. Freedom was close, I could almost taste it. I was 25, no longer the naive girl who believed Randy's empty promises to change. I had long since numbed myself to his words, his crocodile tears, and his so-called love. He wasn't going to change. He never would. This was my moment to break free. I had learned from every failed attempt, each one a painful lesson etched into my memory. Over the years, I refined my plan until there was no room for error. Don't reach out to family or friends. Don't overpack, just money and the bare essentials. Stay calm, avoid suspicion. Don't use public transport or travel on the main roads. The woods, though dangerous, are safer. Above all, don't look back. These lessons became my mantra. I repeated them silently, over and over, as I worked. Each word was a step closer to the life I deserved, a life without Randy, without fear, without chains. This was my chance. And I wasn't going to waste it. Adasha. I packed everything I could carry and headed out of the house. My body ached from last night's punishment, every movement a painful reminder, but I forced myself to walk normally. I prayed I wouldn't bump into anyone. The pack was full of watchers, their loyalty to Randy unwavering. A single misstep, a moment of hesitation, and everything I had worked for would unravel. As I approached the pack house door, a familiar scent stopped me cold. Pamela. My heart sank. Of all people, it had to be her. Pamela wasn't cruel, but I couldn't trust her not to alert her mate or someone else. I steadied my breathing, forcing myself to remain calm. Running now would only confirm her suspicions. Adasha. She called out. I turned to her, carefully neutral. Smiling would be too suspicious, after all, what did I have to smile about? Everyone in the pack must have heard Randy's wrath last night when he punished me for talking to Alpha Jason. I let my exhaustion show, my sadness and brokenness written on my face. Pamela, I sighed, meeting her gaze. She bowed respectfully, a habit ingrained in the pack hierarchy. We both know there's no need for that. Randy isn't here, I said, trying to keep my tone even. She relaxed slightly at that, though her eyes still watched me carefully. Despite his monstrous treatment of me, Randy insisted on enforcing respect for me as Luna. It was one of his contradictions. I was his possession, yet disrespect from others was forbidden. How are you? She asked, her tone softer now. We both knew what she meant. My silence was answer enough, and I sighed heavily. Honestly, Adasha, she said after a moment, her voice tinged with pity, when I heard you would be Luna, I was jealous. But now I pity you. The guy isn't in his right mind. She was right. Randy might have been a great catch if he wasn't himself, if his charm wasn't a mask for his cruelty. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. Where are you going? She asked finally, her eyes flicking to the small bag in my hand. To the market, I said smoothly, willing my voice to remain steady. I was hoping to make him something special, to calm him down. She tilted her head, assessing me. You know it won't work, Adasha. Why do you even bother? He's a monster. I couldn't respond. Someone could be listening, and even the truth wasn't safe to speak aloud here. I have to try, I said instead, tears prickling my eyes. The weight of everything, the lies, the pain, the hopelessness, pressed down on me. I had never imagined my life would turn out like this. At 25, I should have been building a future, not clawing my way out of a nightmare. Pamela's gaze shifted back to the bag in my hand. And you're going to the market with a bag instead of a purse? She asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. My fingers tightened around the strap instinctively, betraying my nerves. My wolf remained silent, suppressing her presence to keep my emotions in check. But my quickening heartbeat and shaky breaths told Pamela everything she needed to know. We stared at each other, the air heavy between us. My mouth opened to offer an excuse, but no words came out, only a gasp as I realized I had been holding my breath. I saw it in her eyes, realization. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them, the weight of being caught crashing over me. I had failed again. Pamela stepped closer, her expression unreadable as she studied me. Then, to my surprise, her voice entered my mind through the pack link. You better get going so you can get a good head start, Adasha. I'll pretend you went to the market to buy you more time. Make sure he doesn't catch you this time around. Relief washed over me like a wave, and I let out a shaky sigh. Thank you, I whispered, my voice breaking with gratitude. Pamela gave me a small nod, her expression hardening. Go. Now. I looked at Pamela, searching her face for any sign of insincerity, but I found none. Deep down, I knew she was a rare ally, a quiet yet steadfast support. Thank you, I linked her, my gratitude pouring through the connection. She gave me a small nod, her expression resolute, and I wiped my tears away. Straightening my back, I stepped out of the pack house, my heart hammering against my ribs. The world outside seemed oblivious to my turmoil. People moved about, busy with their own lives, sparing me no more than a passing glance. It was perfect. I kept my pace steady and unhurried, every step calculated to appear casual. As I reached the edge of the woods, the fear gripping my chest began to loosen, its hold weakening with every step into the trees. The moment the dense forest surrounded me, I exhaled a shaky breath. I wasn't free yet, but this was a start. Wasting no time, I slipped out of my dress, folding it hastily and shoving it into my bag. The cool air kissed my skin, and I took a deep breath, grounding myself. Then, I let go. The familiar sensation of my body shifting washed over me, bones realigning, muscles stretching as I transformed. Pain gave way to a powerful sense of relief as I became one with my wolf, Willow. The aches and bruises from last night's punishment dulled, replaced by the strength and speed of my wolf form. I grabbed the bag in my mouth and bolted, my paws pounding against the forest floor. The earth blurred beneath me as I wove through the trees, leaping over fallen branches and roots. The wind rushed past, carrying the faint, exhilarating scent of freedom, and I pushed myself harder, faster. This was it, my chance to reclaim my life. With every stride, I prayed. I prayed to fate, to the moon, to anyone who might listen. I prayed for freedom, for safety, for the strength to keep running. My breath came in steady bursts as determination surged through me. I didn't know where I was going, but it didn't matter. All I knew was that I wasn't looking back. Not this time. Adasha. I ran with everything I had, my legs burning as Willow, my wolf, propelled me forward with relentless determination. The pain Randy had inflicted was a distant ache now, dulled by adrenaline and the single-minded drive to escape. I couldn't afford to feel it. I couldn't afford to stop. Every pounding beat of my paws against the forest floor was a desperate push toward freedom. His cruel words echoed in my mind, spurring me on. The sting of my bruises and the ragged sound of my breath didn't matter anymore. All I wanted was to get away. To be free. This was my moment, my chance to reclaim my life, and I couldn't waste it. With each stride, I prayed fervently. Please, don't let Randy catch me this time. My heart, already fractured from years of torment, couldn't endure another failure. My body and Willow wouldn't survive another round of his wrath. This was it, the final push, the last desperate grasp at survival, and I clung to it with everything I had. I had no destination in mind, no clear plan, but I trusted my instincts to guide me. My heightened sense of smell kept me from running in circles. The familiar earthy sense of Woodshire faded with every mile, replaced by fresher, wilder aromas. That was all that mattered, distance. I needed to put as much space as possible between myself and that cursed pack. Paranoia gnawed at me. Though Randy wasn't home, the pack was full of watchers and opportunists, wolves eager to earn his favor. What if someone had seen me? What if a hunting party was already on my trail? I imagined their hulls cutting through the night, the pounding of their paws growing louder as they closed in. Fear tightened in my chest, but I forced myself to keep moving. Pamela's face flashed in my mind, and guilt twisted my stomach. She had taken a risk for me, and though I hoped her mate Jacob would protect her, there were no guarantees. I was grateful for her help, but her sacrifice would mean nothing if I didn't succeed. I had to make it. For her. For me. The farther I pushed into the woods, the more Woodshire faded behind me. The air grew lighter, tinged with the delicate scents of wildflowers and fresh vegetation. The oppressive familiarity of the pack was gone, replaced by the foreign, untamed wildness of the unknown. For the first time, I felt a flicker of relief. I was far from Woodshire now. How far, I couldn't say, but I knew I had put real distance between myself and the nightmare I was leaving behind. When exhaustion finally overtook me, I slowed to a stop, my legs trembling with fatigue. I shifted back into my human form, the transformation leaving me weak and vulnerable. Collapsing beneath the shelter of a towering oak tree, I pressed my back against its rough bark and let myself breathe. Its ancient branches stretched high above me, a comforting canopy of shade. The air was cool and gentle, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. For the first time in years, I felt the faintest whisper of hope. I wasn't free yet. But I was closer than I had ever been. For 3 days, I alternated between running and resting, pushing my body to its absolute limits. The woods became my sanctuary, their dense canopy shielding me from prying eyes. The further I traveled, the more the lingering sense of Woodshire faded, replaced by the crisp, unfamiliar air of the east. By the 3rd day, I felt the weight of the west lifting. Randy's suffocating influence was gone, replaced by the vastness of a world I hadn't seen before. As I sat beneath the shade of another massive oak tree, I allowed myself a small, shaky smile. For the first time in years, hope flickered in my chest. The memories of Woodshire, of Randy, and of the life I had escaped began to dull with every step. It felt surreal. My heart swelled with cautious relief, though I knew the danger wasn't over. Randy was undoubtedly searching for me by now. But this time, I'd outsmarted him. He'd scour the familiar places, those I'd run to in my previous, failed attempts. He wouldn't expect me to disappear this deeply into unknown territory. Still, I knew the trick was staying hidden. Resting beneath the oak's sturdy branches, I finally let my guard down for the first time in days. My body eased, tension melting away as I allowed myself a moment to simply breathe. That was my first mistake. The sound was faint, barely a whisper of paws against the forest floor. My wolf, Willow, stirred instantly, but it was too late. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to my feet, ready to shift and run. But the shadows around me moved with terrifying precision, and I realized I was already